Philip was testing his faith. Do you think God ever tests our faith? Yeah, we get into some situations and he wants to see, what are we going to do? Are we going to trust him? Or will we forget about him? The disciples' attitude was that this was an impossibility. By performing this miracle, Jesus made a great impact on Philip's mind. And you know, of all the stories in the Bible, I think this story, feeding the 5,000, proves beyond the shadow of a doubt that Jesus was indeed the Messiah. Now it says Jesus knew what he would do. Do you think he knew about a little boy with 5 loaves, hush puppies, and 2 fish? He knew. He knew what he was going to do. Jesus had complete confidence in his Father. His faith was so strong, he knew his Father had the power to supply the needs of these 5,000 people. Did Jesus know of everything he would do? Yes, he did. In verse 7 it says, Philip answered him, 200 denarii worth of bread is not sufficient for them, that every one of them may have a little. Now, some translations of the Bible say 200 pennyworth. But whichever is used, this was equal about 200 average days' wages, and Philip knew this amount of bread would not feed such a large crowd. Looking at verses 8 and 9, it says, one of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, there is a lad here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 small fish. But what are they among so many? Can you imagine this boy? Now, when it says a lad, the commentary says it could be a child 5 or 6 years old, or it could be a boy up to his teenage. Yeah. Can you imagine this boy being so excited the night before that he could hardly sleep because he was going to go see the prophet and teacher? Have you ever had that experience? You know, you're so wound up, you feel so excited that, man, I can't wait until tomorrow comes. And you toss and turn. And guess what? Mother and Dad doesn't have to call you. You're up and ready. You want to get on the road. I think this fact that John is the only one who records Andrew's part in the story makes it clear that John was an eyewitness to the miracle. Andrew was also from Bethsaida. So he comes back with a comment, the boy has 5 loaves and 2 fish. Andrew may have known the boy personally because he was from the same area. This is why he may have suggested to Jesus as a possible source of food. Now I want to ask you, if Mother had made this lunch for this boy, and someone comes and says, look, we need your food, what would have been his attitude? Mommy made this for me. It's mine. Kind of reminds us of ourselves sometimes, right? Oh, this is mine. You can't have any part of it. It's all mine. But you know, this makes me think that this mother and father had taught this boy to share. You know, we're all selfish, whether we want to agree to it or not. I'll tell you what, spending 44 years in the classroom showed me that most kids are selfish. Sorry about that, but they are. I'm selfish, you're selfish. Okay, so we have 5 barley loaves. Now, barley was basically feed for the livestock and for the poor people. So this tells me that this boy came from a poor family, which to me, if you're poor and this is your food, you're not going to give it away so easily. But he did. He gave the food to Andrew, and he took it to Jesus. Now, the fish were probably either sun-dried or pickled. So that's the way they preserved their fish. Now, the bread would be the main course. The fish would be like a relish that you would put on the bread. Now, if the boy was excited before he came to see Jesus, what do you think about when he's going back home? Wow. What a story that he would have to tell. Now, Andrew asked the question, what are they, these 5 hush puppies and 2 fish, among so many? What's 5 plus 2? 7, right? And we know what the Bible says about 7, right? It's completeness. When Jesus does something, he does it right. He's going to complete it. So, Jesus has the 5 little loaves, the 2 small fish, and he's going to bless them and pass it out to the people. Now, I think God is big in math. And his favorite math is multiplication. Bill's saying, little is much when God is in it. Philippians chapter 4 and verse 19 states, my God shall supply all your needs. Not your wants. You know, sometimes we want ice cream and cake. And God says, no, I'll give you bread and water. So, verse 10. Verse 10. Then Jesus said, make the people sit down. Now there was much grass in the place, so the men sat down in numbers about 5,000. Now, in Mark's gospel, he said that the people sat down in groups of 50s and 100s. Now, this must have been a large area. 5,000 men. So there had to be some wives, and there had to be some children, other than this little boy. And so they all sat down in sort of a circle, and there was an opening in the circle so that it would be easier to serve everybody in the circle. Verse 11, and Jesus took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed them to the disciples, and the disciples to those sitting down, and likewise the fish, as much as they wanted. Jesus blesses the food, and he begins to break it in pieces. Jesus received from the Father. Jesus gave to the disciples gave to the people, and the people gave to others. I'd like to read this quote from Desire of Ages, page 270. We can impart only that which we receive from Christ, and we can receive only as we impart to others. As we continue imparting, we continue to receive, and the more we impart, the more we shall receive. Thus we may be constantly believing, trusting, receiving, and imparting. So when God gives to us, what does He expect? We give to others, right? And the more we give, the more we receive. So we can constantly be believing, trusting, receiving, and imparting. We serve a great God, right? He blesses us more than we deserve. He gives to us abundantly, but not for us to hold on to and say, it's mine. You can't have it. But it's to share with others. And as we share, then He will keep giving. If we hold to it, then He's not going to keep giving. Verse 12 says, so when they were filled, He said to His disciples, gather up the fragments that remain so that nothing is lost. Can you imagine? I mean, it just blows my mind. 5 little loaves of bread, 2 little fish, and Jesus performs a miracle and feeds every one of them until they are full. They eat all they want. And then Jesus said, gather up everything that's left. Now Jesus was teaching a lesson of not wasting any part of a blessing. If you receive a blessing, don't waste it. Share it with somebody else. People took this food back to home and gave it to others so that they too could share in God's blessing. And verse 13 says, therefore they gathered them up and filled 12 baskets with the fragments by those who had been left by, let's see, let me read it again. Therefore they gathered them up and filled 12 baskets with the fragments of the 5 barley loaves which were left over by those who had eaten. Now these fragments were not partly eaten food. No. These were fragments that had not been eaten. They were left over by each group. This was in excess of the needs of the groups of people. Now, I always wondered, where did they get 12 baskets from? Well, I guess out of 5,000 people, there should have been 12 baskets, right? These were probably wicker baskets that a Jew would carry when taking a journey through regions where food would not be readily available, and especially to avoid buying from a Gentile. So among the 5,000 men plus women and children, 12 baskets were filled. Out of what? 5 little loaves and 2 little fish. Everybody had eaten, and they had 12 baskets left over. Verse 14 reads, then those men, when they had seen the sign that Jesus did, said, this is truly the prophet who is to come into the world. Those men is not just referring to the males, but is talking about all the people present. The word said literally means they kept saying. In other words, they kept repeating the statement over and over. This is truly the prophet who is to come into the world. I'd like to call this little boy Simon. Now picture Simon going back home after this experience. And he runs in the house and he said, Mom, Dad, guess what? What is it, son? Jesus took my 5 loaves and my 2 fish and he fed all those people. Now, Simon, be careful. You don't want to stretch the truth. Oh, Mom, Dad, I was there. Andrew came and got my food and took it to Jesus. And Jesus blessed it, and he fed all those people. Would you like to have been there? Would you like to have had that experience? That Jesus could take 5 little loaves, 2 little fish, and he could feed 5,000 plus people. Did that give us courage? That we serve that kind of God. Little is much when God is in it. There are lots of things that we can learn from stories, and especially this story. And I just listed 7 things that I think we can take away from our story today. 1, share with others what you have, whether it's large or small. 2, God will multiply what you share. 3, the more you impart to others, the more God will impart to you. And God's promise is to supply all our needs and not our wants. 5, share how God has blessed your life. You know, we're told that sometimes our own testimony is the best witness that we can have to others. 6, God may surprise you because of some small act you do. Show compassion for those who are less fortunate than you. And remember, number 7, God's favorite math is multiplication. Allow him to use his math in your life. May God bless us as we go forth from this place. Do we have somebody who can stand up and lead us in our hymn 271? Gracious God, we're thankful. Thank you now for the blessings of us. Lord, as you blessed us, and you be willing to share your love. Help us to walk the straight and narrow path. Coming back with you. Know that we can. Lord, help us to be ready. Save us, O Lord, in spite of our sin. Christ.